Hey there, fellow security colleagues. Luke Bensi here with the Soteria Security Management System. In this video, I want to briefly discuss the Carver Target Analysis and Vulnerability Assessment methodology. As many of you out there know, Carver is a unique tool in our industry in that it helps us assess critical infrastructure or other valuable assets that belong to our organization using both a qualitative and quantitative process. Now, Carver itself has been around for decades. There's even been some debate as to who actually came up with it. Was it the CIA? Was it the Army Special Forces? Was it the old OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, back in the days of World War II? I often equate Carver to a SWOT analysis in business. Everybody in business uses a SWOT analysis. Everybody takes credit for it, but nobody knows where it actually came from. That's sort of the same case with Carver. But I'm here to say that because I had the fortunate opportunity to co-author this book here, the Carver Target Analysis and Vulnerability Assessment Methodology, a practical guide for evaluating security vulnerabilities. It's a long title, I know, I hear that all the time. But I was able to write this book with the godfather of Carver, Leo Labbé, and Leo was from the CIA Special Activities Division. And we were also fortunate enough to have the former Supreme Allied Commander of Europe and the former Commandant of the U.S. Marine Corps, as well as the President's former National Security Advisor, General James Jones, who helped us write the foreword to the book. And what I can tell you is that the origins of Carver and many other questions about this very revolutionary process are all answered inside. But I'm not here today to sell you a book. Rather, I want to share with you how the Carver methodology has been integrated into Soteria, into this vulnerability assessment software system as a means to streamline the physical security assessment process that all of us have when we go out into the field to do assessments. But for those of us out there, just so we're all on the same page, we know that when we go conduct physical vulnerability assessments, we know how important it is to have a plan, to have some sort of thought out process, some kind of roadmap, if you will, that when we go onto the site to perform an assessment, we have a methodical process, a step-by-step procedure that walks us through the 6 criteria that make up the acronym of the word Carver. And Carver, just as a refresher, stands for criticality, accessibility, recoverability, vulnerability, effect, and recognizability. And let me quickly define each one of those terms for you. So the first one, criticality. Criticality is the single points of failure and the degree of importance to a system of operations, a particular asset. The next one is accessibility, and that is the ease of access for aggressors to reach the critical assets. Next is recoverability, the time and effort to recover from system operations after an actual event has occurred. Then vulnerability, the level of exposure to attack based on an adversary's capability. Next is effect, which is the magnitude of adverse consequences resulting from malicious actions and subsequent responses. And then finally, the second R is for recoverability, and that is the likelihood that potential adversaries would recognize that an asset is indeed critical to the overall system. Now, each of these criteria are assigned a score from 1 to 5. Now, the military, they may use a 1 to 10 method. However, when we designed the Soteria software, we found that it was more user-friendly to simply use 1 to 5. And these numbers, they obviously represent a value. So for example, if we were talking about criticality, a score of a 1, which would be the lowest number, would mean that a loss of this asset would not affect mission performance, whereas a score of a 5, or the highest number, would mean that taking out this asset, it would be a mission stopper to the organization. If we were talking about accessibility, let's say a score of 2, for example, would mean that an asset or facility is indeed accessible, where a score of 4 would mean that it would be difficult for an adversary to gain access. As you can see, this isn't rocket science, but it is very well thought out, and more importantly, it uses common sense. So when we were designing Soteria, we understood that security professionals, they're only going to use a software program that was easy to learn, that was based on common sense, and it utilized efficiency as the backbone of the mission when they were out in the field. They wanted something done quickly. In fact, Soteria cuts down your assessment time by up to 70%. And funny, incidentally, when people ask me how we came up with the concept of the vulnerability assessment software system that eventually grew into Soteria, I tell them the following story, which you've probably heard me tell before in another video, but basically it goes like this. There is a major multi-billion tech giant, and they had finally decided that it was time for them to hire a physical security director. This director, who was a former Navy SEAL, he needed to get his team on the same page rather quickly. He needed them to speak the same language in security, and he needed to implement a process that could serve as a baseline for evaluating the company's facilities, as well as their other critical major assets. So, this security director, having used Carver during his military career, he went into a search engine like Google and he typed in the term Carver methodology training. And our company, we came up as the only certified instructors. We've been teaching this course for 20 years. And then over the next several months, we slowly began training this large security team. Now, being that it was a tech firm comprised of extremely intelligent young professionals, call them millennials, whatever you want, we would ask them at the end of each course what they thought of the training. And after one particular course, a young man said, "Hey, wow, this Carver thing, I mean, it's really great, but why are you guys still using antiquated Excel spreadsheets? And in some cases, you're going out in the field with paper and pencil. Why isn't this Carver thing an app? Why isn't this Carver thing an app?" I mean, guys, when we heard this, at this moment, the light bulb went off. And looking back, I can't believe we didn't think of this sooner. Anyway, after almost 2 years of design, development, and field testing, we finally created what we believe is to be the game changer in the field of physical vulnerability assessments. And again, that's the Soteria security management system. The other important thing that I want to mention about Carver is this. It can also be used as an international language, and Soteria is very international. I've traveled to over 100 countries. At current count, I think about 141 countries. But in probably 36 of those countries, I've used or I've taught the local liaison partners that I was working with, whether those were police officers, military personnel, or intel folks, taught them the basics of the Carver methodology. And even though Carver uses terms like recoverability and recognizability, those words actually still translate and resonate to international security partners. That's why the United Nations security forces even use Carver, because it's actually become its own global security language. Now, I can go on and on about the value of Carver, how it's not just for physical infrastructure, but can also be utilized as an intelligence tool for, let's say, conducting human operations, for maybe spotting, assessing, or recruiting foreign assets, how it can be used for offensive targeting, for, let's say, sabotage operations or some other type of missions. But for now, let me just conclude this video by saying that if you're really looking for the most effective vulnerability assessment methodology out there, and you want it packaged within an easy-to-use software platform, there is nothing better out there than the combination of Carver and then the Soteria security management system. If you want more information about Carver, happy to speak to anybody out there. Please feel free to shoot me an email, or I think we've got my cell phone on the screen. And if you would like a demonstration of Carver, please contact us at our website, www.soteriapro.com, or again, just simply reach out to me directly. But until then, I want to thank you for watching, and remember to always stay safe and vigilant. Take care.